Howdy, folks. Welcome to this documentary series on Bill Anderson. funRonni made a gift to the channel, actually the equivalent of 6 gifts to the channel, for me to break down a 90-minute documentary on Bill Anderson's career and life. And all these folks, like Vince Gill is hosting this one and or emceeing it to an extent. And it's just fantastic. So Ronnie, thank you for this gift of this entire series. And so we're going to do this is part 5 of 6, right? That's how that goes. It's a 6-part, 90 minutes. I break them down into roughly 15-minute segments. So we already saw 4. So here we go. Episode 5.
Long time since it bothered me.
Well, good. Let's get back to Lynn Anderson. Get Lynn. Oh, I'm sorry, Lynn. George had something to say. Pardon me.
Yeah, I was just thinking, whispering is not the only thing that Bill's especially known for. You mentioned, and songwriting, but you mentioned going to England. Bill and I were together in England on the International Festival of Country Music. And we were flying home on a plane, and Tom Paul Glaser was sitting behind us. I can see he knows what's coming. And we get back to Nashville, and I guess you saw the same paper. I picked up the Tennessean the next morning, and somebody had interviewed Tom Paul Glaser and said, well, you went over to England to the International Festival of Country Music with all the Opry people. And Tom said, yeah. I said, it was great. He said, well, what was it like, really? He said, well, it was great, except the trip home. And the newspaper writer said, well, what was wrong with that? He said, I was sitting behind Bill Anderson and George Hamilton IV, 8 hours on the plane listening to these two guys trying to out-sincere each other. That's true.
Out-sincere.
I remember that.
I love that.
Lynn, what are you going to sing?
I'm going to sing a Connie Smith song. I am. I finally get to do this. I did have a hit record with one of Bill's songs called "I'm All Right, I'm All Right," but they asked me to do this, and it's about time I got a chance to sing this song. So I said, "Yeah, sure. Let me see if I can do it justice." It's called "Then and Only Then."
She's not shy.
Play it just like Weldon.
No, do Lloyd Green. Do it well.
No pressure.
Do Mike. There you go. Yeah. Good steel guitar. In your haste, you left and said you'd be returning. In my sorrow, I forgot to ask you when. In my lonely room, I sit and count the hours. Every minute, thinking I look up and you come walking in. For then and only then will I stop crying. And this aching, breaking heart of mine will mend. Not until I feel your arms around me will I stop crying, and I live for then and only then. Play it.
Yeah, there he goes.
All that's left inside my heart is just an echo and a tiny thread of hope to which I cling. What I know, oh no, maybe someday, if I keep holding on, maybe someday you'll remember where you left me. Come back for me again. For then and only then will I stop crying, and this aching, breaking heart of mine will mend.
How does he have that hair at this age?
Until I feel your arms around me. When I stop crying and I live for then and only then. And I live for then and only then.
That's good energy there.
That's when you start making up your own words. That's all you can do in a spot like that.
And you're the pro. You did it.
Well, I had to grab my glasses here, but they're styling in leopard. So, but did I say your words right eventually?
I don't know. I forgot them.
So did I. So we're even.
Thank you.
Hey,
Good job,
Ben,
man.
I have a good news, bad news story about that. I was living in California and writing songs, and I had written a song called Senses. And I got the good news that Connie Smith had recorded my song and the good news that it was going to be released. And then the bad news was it was on the backside of Then and Only Then. But I'm still happy. It's quite all the way
That
to the
B-side
back.
ride was a
There
pretty good
you
deal
go.
every now and then.
Yeah. We used to say back in those days, and I've done it many times, if you can't get the side, get the ride. I wrote the backside of a lot of, I had the backside of Pick Me Up on Your Way Down by Charlie Walker and, things like that. There's nothing wrong with that.
No kidding. I
Thanks
think,
for the
wasn't
lift.
it Johnny Russell's Act Naturally was the B-side to Yesterday? Is that right? Yeah. Act Naturally that Johnny Russell wrote.
Yeah.
Was,
Yeah.
was
Right.
the B-side to Yesterday, or maybe one of the biggest selling singles in
That's
history.
something.
I'm not sure it was
Wow.
Yesterday, but
Yeah, he used to say if it wasn't for 3 ex-wives and the IRS, he'd be a rich little fat boy. I love him. I miss him.
yeah, so Johnny, last time we got together to do one of these, I think they said that 27 or 29 people that came to the very first one were no longer with us.
30 of them now. It's
30, yeah.
Too many.
Well, you got to know them all, pal.
Well, when we first started doing these reunion shows, it was, our idea was entertainment, to present entertainment and to have a good time together. And then as time has gone by, we realized that, we've created history in these rooms. And it's been, every one of us, Jimmy Fortune came up to me a while ago, he said, the biggest thing that's happened in my career since I went solo after the Statler Brothers, he said, is being a part of these family reunions. And it really is. This is just wonderful.
That's awesome.
I'm overwhelmed with it.
I think, unfortunately, a lot of people lose sight of the fact that there's so many people that still love all the people in this room, all these songs, all these singers. And just because they're not on top 40 radio anymore doesn't mean those people have gone away and don't want to hear these great songs. So once again, it's great to be here and celebrate so many years of so many great songs.
Thank you.
When you started writing, was there as much co-writing going on as there is today?
No. Co-writing was, you were very restricted in those days for a couple of reasons. When you co-write with somebody who's under contract to write for a different publishing company than you are, or you were in those days, you could not co-write because the publishers would not agree to split the copyrights, which is getting kind of technical in the industry. But if you wrote for one company and I wrote for another, in those days we could not have written together. And forbid that you wrote for ASCAP and I wrote for BMI, they would not
Acknowledge the other.
split those. Somewhere along in the late 70s, early 80s, I think it was around the time of the Great Outlaws album that Willie and Waylon and Tom Paul and somewhere right in that era. I think, and Bobby Bear may know more about this than me, didn't they just kind of say, okay, we made the music, you guys fight over it, and a lot of those walls?
Bill Anderson is a walking encyclopedia. It's one thing to have been in all those circumstances. It's another thing to remember those details. And he's even astute enough to know what he doesn't remember, but who to ask in the audience right there.
Came down.
Yeah. When they, Willie would get a bunch of people together, him and Waylon, and Chris, and Cash, and all of them. And I asked Willie once. I said, "How do you work this out?" He said, we just go in and record and let them work it out.
Well, that's what eventually tore down the walls, and that's when the co-writing really became in vogue. Now, I wrote with Roger Miller because we wrote for the same company. I wrote with Buddy Killen. I wrote with Jerry Crutchfield. I wrote with people that I could write with there at that company. But how sad it is to look back now and think, gosh, I could have written with Hank Cochran. I could have written with Harlan Howard if we'd have all, kind of been under the same umbrella. But in those days, you couldn't do that.
Was there, did country music have a history of guys saying, I'll record your song if I can get a piece?
Rephrase the question.
And I've got a real good story
Piece
about
of ass.
that. Webb Pierce and Mel Tillis have some good stories.
When I'll record your song if I could get a piece. And then I think it was Jeannie Seeley who said, you might want to rephrase that question because she's thinking that you could get a piece of ass. I'll record it if you give it up. But Vince obviously was talking about the, financial, the remuneration there.
About that. Farron Young came to me early in my career, and he had 2 songs of mine that he had been played, and he said, I want to record both of them, but he said, I can't record both of them unless I get half of one of them as the writer. And I was riding with him in his car up to Springfield, Missouri to do the Ozark Jubilee television show, and he had me right there. I couldn't get out. We're going 70 miles an hour down the road. He said, okay, which song are you going to give me half of?
Did he pick the wrong one?
Well, thank goodness, yeah. The two songs, the up-tempo song was called Riverboat, which was a #1 record. The other side that he and I wrote together was called Face to the Wall. They both actually made the top 10. But yeah, there was a certain amount of that went on. And at that point in time, I would have given Farron Young, probably given him half of both of them just to get them recorded.
Well, my favorite story of a songwriter giving something away was Willie. Giving away, what did he give away?
Family Bible.
Yeah, a couple of songs, $500, $50, was it?
50.
Sold them for $50. And his response to that was the greatest thing I ever heard. Somebody said, does it bother you that you sold those songs for $50? And he goes, I needed the $50.
Wow.
And just what a gracious way to respond to something instead of being bitter and being, hold a grudge or whatever.
Another great story about him was he offered to sell Hello Waltz to Farron Young for $500 after it was already starting to make its way up the charts. And Farron would not he said, I'll give you the $500, but I'm not going to buy your song. And, of course, Willie ended up making, thousands of dollars about it. And the story is he walked in Tootsie's one night and kissed Farron on the lips and said, thank you.
Well, Don Wayne is here with us today, and I know that you guys have a history together of some different songs.
I want to hear, because it's been years since Don and I have discussed this between the two of us, and I've told the story the way I remember it. I don't know if you remember. I'm interested to know if you remember the story the same way that I do about a song called Saginaw, Michigan.
I think I do. I was a tool and die maker. I earned my living as a tool and die maker in the early 60s, and one of the tools that I did my work with was a Lufkin micrometer, a micrometer that was made by the Lufkin Tool Company in Saginaw, Michigan. And I was desperately wanting to become a professional songwriter, so I think that I was greatly inspired by that little micrometer to write Saginaw, Michigan. And I wrote the song, and I took it along with some other songs to Buddy Killen at Tree Publishing. And I think that was the one out of maybe 4 or 5 songs that he really liked. And a few days later, he called my wife to call the shop where I was at working and see if I could come down to a studio downtown. Was it at the Cumberland Lodge building? Was that?
Yeah, that's
Sam Phillips Studio? Yeah. And so my wife got the message to me, and I think I went strolling in there about 3 o'clock in my grease-stained khaki pants that I wore in the shop, and Roger Miller was coming out from. Did he cut Chug-a-Lug on that session or not, or was that the later session?
I don't remember.
Don't remember. But anyway, Bill and his band were cutting some demos, your songs for Tree. I don't know how that came about, but anyway, Buddy Killen wanted me to do Saginaw, Michigan. So we recorded Saginaw, Michigan with, I think Weldon Myrick was on the session and some other good musicians. And when the session was all finished, Bill talked about how much he loved the rhyming scheme and really liked the song, but he said it just doesn't say enough. There's just not enough of a story. So, and I think that you were interested in maybe recording it if I could come up with something good, So I said, let me do some rewrite on it and see what I can do. And I got up the next day and went to the shop, and all I thought about was getting a song recorded by Bill Anderson, finishing up Saginaw, Michigan. And that went on for about 2 weeks. And I must have scrapped $200 or $300 worth of tools still at everything I done, because you can't think about two things at once. And my mind was just really obsessing with Saginaw, Michigan. But I couldn't come up with anything. But all at once one day, I came up with the idea to do the sting, to have the young kid write back home and tell his love that he had struck the biggest strike in Saginaw in Alaska, to go up in Alaska, and that he had made the biggest strike.
Biggest strike in
Klondike history, yeah.
Yeah.
And then I wanted the boy to go back home and sell the old man the claim that wasn't there.
Yeah.
And I had the third verse completed, and then the fourth verse, I had the first line, I think, was, her dad met the bus, or met the train in Saginaw, Michigan. And I couldn't come up with anything else. I had the last line to the fourth verse, will you sell your father-in-law your Klondike claim? I know that's a strange way to write songs, but when you've got the story in your mind, you can write the last line first if you want to. And
Yeah.
so a few days later, Buddy Killen calls and says, but the deadline is just about here. Bill's getting ready to cut. And I said, well, I'll bring you what I've got tomorrow. I'll write it out, and you get Bill to see if he wants to or can finish it up. And Bill did. He wrote some brilliant lines in the songs.
Thank you. Well, the name Saginaw, Michigan appealed to me too, as it did to you, but for a different reason. When we lived in Columbia, South Carolina during World War II, we lived in a duplex apartment, and the people that lived upstairs was a soldier and his wife. He was stationed at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, outside of Columbia, and they were from Saginaw, Michigan.
Uh-huh.
So I had grown up knowing the name Saginaw, Michigan, the way you saw it on the toolbox, and it was ingrained in me because I knew these people who were actually from there. So when I saw the title to start with, it intrigued me, and then your story was so good. I don't know, you may not remember this.
That was such a melodic phrase, Saginaw,
Yeah,
Michigan.
it
Just
really
almost
good.
sang itself.
What you may not remember, because you said you think that I recorded it, I took it to the studio to record it. I was going to record it. I loved it. But I had another song about a city that we got to first. I recorded a song that Connie later cut called
Ohio?
Cincinnati, Ohio.
Cincinnati, Ohio.
And Saginaw.
All right. I'm going to cut that part there at the Cincinnati, Ohio part. But you know how I say on the songs a lot when I'm commenting on life and the storylines is that the dynamic of life, little random events, it's like the butterfly effect. That the butterfly effect is the idea that like if a butterfly flaps its wings in Africa, it sets off a chain of events that eventually becomes a hurricane in the United States or wherever. And it's that idea that very, very small changes in a dynamic can have this ripple effect over time. And history is always told in reverse, of course. We're in the present, as we call it, and that's the only explanation we have. And then we can look back and say, oh, this is what caused that. But there are so many random variables in life that we look back on and we tell the story and we say, well, this is why this happened. And it's fun to hear the stories. In this case, you could see, Saginaw, Michigan on the toolbox. And Bill happened to live in Columbia, South Carolina, and the neighbor is from Saginaw, Michigan. And that's what piques his interest. These are random events. And some folks will say, well, the universe is putting the energy together to make that work. Or others will explain it that God is determining because he's in control of everything and all that. However you look at it, they're random events. You don't know in the moment that they're going to turn out to be anything because most moments don't seem to be directly causal on what comes later. But I love hearing these stories, these storylines and so on, of all these different folks. So, all right, guys, that's episode 5 of 6, courtesy of funRonni, the philosopher psychologist. She took psychology courses in college, and I love having fun with that. Okay, Ronnie, thank you again, my dear, and everybody. Hope you enjoyed that. See you on the next episode. Have a great day and keep rocking the country.